You're talking about sort of match fixing, really, when you talk about tampering with gloves.
I think that Ben was probably ill-advised to mention this in the public domain, and I've used the terminology about bullying, and Eddie's putting his face into pictures that necessarily doesn't need to be involved in.
Get some balls, and I think that that's what you need in this game. When you're the new kid on the block, you're going to get bullied, you're going to get thrown around because people don't like change.
The circus is rolling back into town, or the carnival of horrors. Do we expect to see...
Carnival of horrors.
Well, you know, with John Fury's behaviour,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they're going to muzzle him.
So this is a proper fight. It's a great rematch.
Yeah.
Alexander Usyk is the undisputed, pound-for-pound, king of the world.
You look at the talent of these two, and that could be the biggest fight in British boxing, without a doubt.
Welcome to episode 92 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. This week we are joined by one of the best voices in boxing, Adam Smith.
Hi.
Adam, lovely to see you.
Nice to see you.
Fellas, last week ended with another... What are you two laughing at?
I'm just laughing at him.
My presenting skills.
No, I'm
Yes.
laughing. I'm
nice.
laughing at him, mate.
Yeah, nice to be back together.
Last week we saw...
Did you name check me then, by the way?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I introduced you first.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. Sorry.
I mean, I try not to. I try to skip past you to the person I actually want to speak to.
That's what I thought.
Which could be the...
That's why I'm double checking.
Anyone?
We saw a breakout of a potential feud, another feud going on between a couple of promoters. Ben Shalom's made some comments about his relationship with Frank, but specifically last week, Frank Warren, but specifically last week there was an issue around the gloves that Fabio Wardley used in this fight, and some controversy breaking out as a result of it. What's your guys' reaction to what Ben didn't supposedly said? He said that there was an issue, that they reported the gloves to the British Boxing Board of Control before the fight. After the fight, he was a message carrier. It wasn't his message. He was just imparting it for someone else.
I interviewed Ben about that, actually, and that's exactly what he said. He said, listen, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just passing on from the team that there was concerns surrounding the gloves. But the gloves have to fit a certain criteria with the British Boxing Board of Control. The team also sees the gloves. Absolutely. And I think that it was the fly gloves that they were using that they said that they was not particularly happy about, but they went ahead with it. And I think that it all sort of got blown out of proportion a little bit. And from
What, in boxing?
yeah, no, exactly. And I think that argument that argument went as soon as it came, if I'm totally
And
honest.
it should have gone.
Absolutely.
Absolutely
because,
ridiculous to take away Fabio Wardley's victory like that.
Yeah.
I've not heard anything from Frazer, Clarke. They checked the gloves beforehand. Everybody's happy. They agree that. The fight goes ahead. Fabio Wardley wins in a round. Fabio Wardley moves on and Frazer Clarke loses. That's it for me.
I mean, what's your thoughts on the comments and what's been going on with Frank Warren and Ben Shalom?
Before I say that, let's hear what Frank had to say about Ben Shalom's observations.
Manufacturers of the gloves, I'm sure they're going to take that up with him. I know for a fact they will take it up with him because he is, and the guy who runs that company is a nice young fella, entrepreneurial, built a business from scratch. And what he's saying is totally out of order and wrong. And and as to say it's an investigation, you heard what the Board of Control said. How's he investigating anything? He doesn't even have the gloves. I mean, what is he? What, Clouseau? Does he think he's Inspector Clouseau, or in his case, Inspector Clueless? I mean, the man's a complete and utter idiot to even be going down this road. It's a poor excuse for what was a legitimate win. And I'm sure that Fabio wore those gloves in his previous fight. And the irony of all this is, I understand tomorrow night Adam Azim, who's fighting on his bill, wears fly gloves. What planet is this guy on?
I mean, Frank's annoyed. Do you think he has the right to be as annoyed? I mean, he talked about actions for libel.
I do, because, you know, you're talking about sort of match fixing, really, when you talk about tampering with gloves, etc. And when that rises to the surface,
without wanting to appear partisan to Ben, which is often the observation that's made about me, is that exactly what he said? Because if let me just...
That's the key point.
Is that because ultimately what gets said in boxing is very rarely what gets repeated out of the guys out of the mouths of the guys that get offended by it, and I know that firsthand. If Ben is verbalising an opinion being put forward by Frazer Clarke's team prior to the fight, and then post to the fight to the British Boxing Board of Control, which is in part his responsibility, Where is the major issue with this? Because I don't think he quite said he was going to have a thorough investigation of it. He made an observation that he was imparting some of the information that was given to him.
As in he's the messenger.
He's the messenger.
Where I think this problem lies is that different gloves, different shapes, etc., etc. You get your Cleto Reyes, you get your Flyers.
Yeah, there's different
you get
punches
your
gloves. We've had that for years.
And certain fighters like certain gloves, and obviously that glove didn't suit Frazer Clarke, and perhaps that was the concerns about the make of the glove as opposed to
do you remember
the tampering of it, and I think it got maybe blown out of proportion.
But isn't that something that should be dealt with before?
Absolutely.
Contracts are signed at the
both
beginning.
Both teams were happy with it going in, so I don't understand what's happened after the fight.
I'm going off piece slightly, but what was the situation in the ring with Kell Brook and Amir Khan, where Kell had to change his gloves in the ring, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And so they must have agreed prior to that.
They did, and Amir wouldn't fight with the gloves that Kell had on, and he had to take them. He was in one set of gloves, warming up in the changing room. He had to take those off, go into the ring, and get relaced and start again. That's what happened on that night.
I mean, I think that Ben was probably ill-advised to mention this in the public domain. If there was a necessity, for whatever reason, for there to be a sense check prior to the fight based upon Frazer Clarke's team, whatever their opinion may have been, and if they wanted it voiced again after the fight, then Ben should have perhaps followed that directive but done it on the QT through the British Boxing Board of Control, which is the obligation that they may or may not have, and let the British Boxing Board of Control sort it out. What he's done is by bringing it in the public domain, he's opened the door.
And the problem is it feels like an excuse. And that's not really right. And I haven't heard anything from Frazer Clarke's mouth. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, you can't take anything away from Fabio's performance and Fabio's victory.
Yes.
And I think that, listen, things are agreed before the first bell rings, and the gloves are very much a part of that. Both teams see the gloves, the opponent's gloves. You check them.
And there's often arguments,
and they're sealed
as
well. So when you're talking about tampering gloves, the gloves are sealed, and then the inspectors watching.
Spencer, there's often arguments before the fight, aren't there? Before the fight, but then they agree and they go on.
Yeah, we're putting words in people's mouths. Nobody talked about tampering. Nobody took it to that extent. Ben was quite ambiguous and vague about what the complaint was. He just simply said, from what I can gather and what I've seen, that there was an issue being brought forward by Frazer Clarke's team around the gloves. We put it to the British Boxing Board of Control, and he's left it there. We're going to investigate it, right? And that's been leapt upon, which leads me on to the other part of this conversation. First of all, I don't think Frank is going to be issuing any proceedings for libel anytime soon, because I don't think that's going to meet the burden of obligation, because you have to go a little bit further than just simply saying, I've asked people to look at something. But the general behaviour between the promoters, I don't know what you make of it. I mean, we've spoken before, and I've used the terminology which Frank objects to strongly about bullying. I do think with Ben that he's got to stand his ground, Ben Shalom, and fight his way into a difficult industry, because why should he have the red carpet laid out for him? But I wonder what you guys thought, because it was 2 weeks ago that Shalom's on the stage and Eddie's putting his face into pictures that necessarily doesn't need to be involved in. He's doing little interviews where he's saying to Ben Whittaker, I'll see you later, which would probably infuriate Ben Shalom. I think Eddie threatened to give him a whack, then calls him Betty Shalom.
Then there was Ben and Frank.
So then Ben gets some balls and decides to move Frank out of the way and gets told he's going to get thrown off the stage. I mean, what do you think of all that?
You just said it there. Get some balls, and I think that's what you need in this game. When you're the new kid on the block, you're going to get bullied, you're going to get thrown around, because people don't like change. You know, them guys, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, have been there.
He's been around a few years now, Ben.
But he's new on the block with this whole Riyadh season.
He's managed to find his way in. I mean, we were all surprised that Frank and Eddie were together, having hated each other for years, going to that press conference, and the two of them, and now they're whining and dining and fighting each other in the 5v5. Where's Ben Shalom? He's had Sky, and then suddenly with Martin McCauley finds a way in, bang, massive performance in LA. He's come in and he almost ran the card on October the 12th.
So then he's the new kid on the block. What I'm saying is Riyadh season, Eddie and Frank really had that tied up. Frank, obviously, the main guy involved.
But surely nothing's tied up. It's all about what Turkey wants.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So therefore, he's the new kid on the block, and you know, sometimes they're sort of comfortable.
The new kid in this situation, he's not that new, because he's had the Sky contract for a few years.
No, new kid on the block.
And he's assembled a very, very good stable.
Yeah.
The dynamics have changed, though, haven't they? I mean, ultimately, he's got what most people would consider the blue chip broadcaster, which is Sky, which gives him a calling card to be at the table.
Although DAZN now want to become that, don't they?
Of course they do. And it may well be that at some point the Saudis end up potentially buying DAZN, and that might be their preferred broadcaster. Maybe that would be their call to action.
Sky's always been the one, and Ben had the keys.
Absolutely. And then he needed to have the stable. And once he's got the stable, then he has the value, and then he gets to the top table, irrespective of whether Eddie and Frank, who's not their job, it's not their job to open the door for him.
No.
And the only reason they've opened the door to one another is because Turki Al-Sheikh wants them to.
Yep.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be touching one another with a stick.
And
like
we've
they have done for
enjoyed
the last
it, haven't
15
we?
years.
It's been great fun.
This new deal that Ben Shalom's done now with Riyadh season sponsoring
Yes.
his shows, you know, Ireland, England, etc. Do you think that this has the potential then for sort of like taking over, that like getting Ben Shalom involved with the whole DAZN situation? We've got Frank Warren, obviously with TNT at the moment. Possibly that these rumours circulating, maybe he's going over to DAZN. Do you think it all goes under one umbrella?
Well, first and foremost, if he's the exclusive promoter of Sky, then he's going to have to be negotiating his relationship with DAZN.
But that contract's
and
up
Saudi.
at the end of 25, is that right?
Yeah, next time.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not a contract that Ben will want to relinquish without us speculating on the commercial vagaries of his own broadcast deals. But I'm also keen, before I move on to the Riyadh season and the opportunity that they've got now, which is to be at the table with Eddie and Frank and have a relationship with Turki Al-Sheikh, which is now Turki Al-Sheikh's wish, because he's the one calling the shots, not Frank. Frank opened the door. Frank was the intellectual capital to open the door to Saudi properly. Eddie had been over there taking...
Or George.
Well, certainly George, absolutely, in terms of the day-to-day running of
And
it.
he certainly helped put them together.
But Frank is front of house, isn't he?
Sure.
Yeah, George is the intellectual capital driving the commercial thinking
Yes,
now.
but he's
But
helped knit Frank and
is-
Eddie together, which has been great. And it's been great for boxing. We've had some of the best fights.
Absolutely.
Enter Ben.
Absolutely.
And now Turkey's got all three of them on.
Absolutely right, and it's been dictated by Turkey. And I think what Ben has learnt over the period of time is that he has to establish value to Turki Al-Sheikh rather than have a relationship with Frank and Eddie, because that will come when they're valuable to one another. What did you also make of the observations that are made about Ben and the anal retentiveness of wanting to have contracts that stipulate that he needs to be in certain positions, needs to be sat next to his fighter, needs to exclude XYZ promoter from certain pictures? Do you subscribe to that view? Do you believe that's the byproduct of Ben pushing back against what Frank and Eddie might like to happen to him, rather than what he's going to allow to happen to him?
You need to ask Ben that. I mean, that's a very interesting point.
From an outside point of view, you must have an opinion on it. This is what's being alleged. We all know, I sat here writing an article about the British attitude towards money and why we allow Middle Eastern or American or whatever businesses to buy our businesses. And that got turned into a completely different article by Frank and Eddie because they wanted to deflect away from the core principle, was that they are for sale individually and collectively. In this instance, Ben Shalom is advancing a case of, I need to protect myself, I need to make sure that my contractual rights are retained and maintained as I develop my stable. Do you think he's right to do that? Because Frank and Eddie are pushing back, going, Betty Shalom hasn't got any balls.
Hey,
he's making it all about himself.
He's got to push forwards, Ben. He's got to do everything he can while he's got the window. And that window was given to him by Martin Bacoli's performance. And on the back of that, he's got a fantastic...
In the heavyweights.
Young stable coming
He's
through
got a
as
great
well.
young stable coming through. You saw Adam Azine the other night. We've got Caroline Dubois, the girls, Lauren Price and Karis Ardingshaw. There's so many as well that he's got through because he built that stable on Sky. And of course, now he's got a seat over in Saudi. He wants to do everything he can to maintain that and put himself in the front. Does he have the same weight as the other two promoters? No, not yet. Of course, Frank has huge history. Eddie is a master salesman.
Yep.
Ben's got to find his place, and I still don't think he quite has.
That's experience, isn't it? And ultimately, you know, these boys, as you say...
He's very bright.
He's very bright. I think he's learning his trade. And he needs to keep the right company at times. But I think
the door has been open, which is the most important thing. And I think the weight comes from the fighters that he under his promotion
And
as
also
well.
what he learns, the
he
knowledge.
has that young stable
and they've
that
all
is
got
growing.
different strengths, the three of them, as well.
Well, they've all got to have something that Turki Al-Sheikh wants. And if they haven't, then they won't sit at the table. And if they have, then they will. Also, you know, Ben was talking, I thought slightly strangely, I don't know what you guys think, about young fighters getting very early appearances on Sky. Let's have a look at what Ben had to say about that.
I don't think fighters are getting their development anymore. But, you know, maybe they should be taking more fights off TV. And I know with Callum Simpson, that was something that we signed him before he came to us. And we allowed him to develop on the small horse scene. And then you come onto TV and you're ready and you've got the finished article. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I am looking at that now where huge amount of pressure when you start on Sky Sports. And you're not in with killers from the very, very start. And that can really mess with the fighter's development. You've seen the calls Adam Azim and Frazer Clarke, and to take fights as early as possible. And sometimes you need that development, or it can be dangerous. And I'm not saying that was a reason for Frazer Clarke, but I'm saying it is a great question, because it's a dangerous sport, and the professional game is very different to the amateur sport, and sometimes fans aren't very patient. And maybe we'll start looking at whether, when we're developing fighters, the smaller shows. I think with BT and DAZN, you can get away with almost hiding fighters and putting fighters and letting them develop a little bit more. And I'm not saying they do that, but it's easier. When you're on Sky Sports, that magnifying lens on you, it can make it difficult for a fighter who is learning on the job.
This feels like it's a little bit off the back of Ben Whittaker, but I'm kind of disinclined to agree with that.
I disagree with that.
I mean, what's your view?
I disagree with it. I think that the apprenticeship is done as amateurs. I think that when they're ready to go at that stage, when you're talking about superstars and you've got people like Ben Whittaker and you're going, is that added pressure with all the social media that goes on around it? Stars are made, they feed off that pressure. And I think that platform sort of... Yeah, but they're the stars. Some do.
You had a good amateur career. You had personality. We could work with you at Sky.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is...
Some don't. Some are quieter.
That springboard. The platform is the springboard.
He was saying that Callum Simpson needed the small halls to come through. Ben Whittaker, of course, I was part of that when we wanted him at Sky. We believed he'd be a box office superstar. Yeah, he's got the Marmite characteristics. He's got the showmanship, everything, and he's got huge skills. But of course, he's going to be put under that spotlight very quickly. It's how they deal with it.
But do you think by being put under that spotlight, that's ruining fighters?
Sometimes
I think totally not.
It depends what sort of fighter you are and what personality you are. At Summit, we've got a young fighter called Davies. He's 8-0. We're bringing him through on the small hall shows. He's not got the confidence and the swagger or the name or the amateur pedigree, so he has to be brought through slowly. Some who have got that, who are used to touring around the world, winning competitions, they're attracted by the big promoters. They're almost coaxed into it, and they learn very quickly. Yes, they should be able to handle it.
But on the flip side, you get the fighters that are going to develop the stars of the amateur game that come through, and they get the opponents to develop them in the right way, but they're getting used to that spotlight, and that's what's effective. That's what's effective for them when they get to that level.
Well, Adam Azim's a good example.
Great
because
example.
We thought, fantastic. He's absolutely brilliant junior amateur. He could certainly go really fast, really quickly. He wanted to be a world champion by the time he was 21. I wanted him fighting regularly on Sky, regular. But suddenly he's up there, and then there's the Dalton Smith fight, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, is he ready for it? Well, is this too soon? And once you're there, it's very difficult to pull back.
But isn't it also, I mean, if he is using Ben Whittaker as a reference point in his mind's eye for making that observation, isn't it as much to do with maybe keeping Ben centred about what he's doing in a boxing ring, not what at fashion shows in Milan, or maybe getting a corner that Ben Whittaker responds to and respects, and maybe Shane McGuigan will help him with that if he sits in his corner as a result of this.
But also Ben Whittaker set that up for himself. What I'm saying is that, when you're talking about being the next Nassim Hamed, and you've got this kid who's flash, brash, and he's got this cocky sort of attitude, and he's got to deliver in the ring. If that's the character that he set out for himself, it's not about the platform that was, and that's about him.
Absolutely.
As an individual.
But that's not about, the point I was making was the distractions for Ben Whittaker in this instance were a lot outside the boxing ring, in terms of you're preoccupied. There's one thing saying putting people into TV fights because the expectation level increases. And you could make the argument putting them into Saudi fights, because if you put them in a Saudi fight, they want to impress the fella that's sitting across the table from them, because they want to get the next opportunity.
Against Jarrell Miller and then Hrgovic and then...
Absolutely. And of course Fabio Wardley's now done it in front of Turki Al-Sheikh, whereas Ben Whittaker's first appearance on a Saudi bill has got nothing to do with the television cameras there. It's ultimately the fact he didn't perform for whatever reason he didn't perform.
Took his eye off the ball, that's what it was.
Well,
did he take his eye off the ball? He does train very hard, Ben Whittaker. Well, he dedicates himself to this business, and it may just have been a bad night.
Taking nothing away from Liam Cameron and his brilliant performance, what I'm saying with Ben Whittaker is that from a fighter's point of view, like when a fighter's thinking this way, when he thinks he's just got to turn up effectively to win, which he did, he thought this is a foregone conclusion.
And most of us did.
And things don't happen in that fight the way that it should be happening. It's a rude awakening call, and we will now find out. Sometimes that can be the moulding of a fighter,
the
making of a fighter, but we will now find out if he's the real deal or not.
It can reset him, and ultimately, I think if indeed he was referencing Ben, then I think it's a flawed perspective, because I think young fighters, like young footballers, have to play in front of television cameras or fight. I know it's an individual sport and it's slightly different to being a part of a football team and you've got other senior pros in the dressing room, but ultimately the senior pros for a young fighter are his trainer and his manager, making sure that when he's ready to appear in front of TV cameras and capable of appearing in front of a TV audience, that he's able to do it, and selecting fighters on an individual basis. Suggesting that young fighters shouldn't fight in front of TV cameras because of the expectation, I think, is flawed.
Yeah.
Because they've got to make their money and build their following.
What's key as well is plotting the boxing journey as well, making sure it's the right fights at the right time. Frank Warren's always been brilliant at that.
Yeah.
Or Ricky Hatton with Joe Calzaghe, getting those fighters just on the edge, the prospects coming through, so important. And if you don't do that right and you get ahead of yourself, or you get a couple of defeats, or things go wrong, suddenly you can really lose a talent.
Building those fighters on the undercard of these big events, that is part of the apprenticeship, right? What I'm saying is that if you're a good fighter, you're going to go on the undercard, and so instead of doing it away from the TV cameras, you do it, you do it down the bill, and you're sort of gradually climbing, and you're building your profile.
But the difficulty, Spencer, in Saudi,
the
the problem in Saudi is, and I was with Johnny Fisher the other night, suddenly he's got a chance of appearing in front of Turkey, and we'll get the Bosch plane over, and he's all really excited. Suddenly there's big expectations, and these are young fighters who are learning their trade, and maybe they're not ready for that yet.
I mean, there's the other side of the coin in this conversation, where you've got fighters that are being stuck on these undercards in front of TV cameras that don't merit being there, with due respect, like Campbell Hatton didn't merit being on that Gibraltar bill. He got there because of his father. And Nazim's son. And the other fighters will sit there and go, well, that's not bloody fair. So there's no argument here that's one size fits all. I think it was probably noise for noise sake from Ben there. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But look, talking about noise, we've got the presser coming up for FuryUsyk 2. Is it billed FuryUsyk still?
Shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be, should it?
Yeah.
Looks like it is.
I think it is, though, yeah.
What do you expect to see? Obviously, we saw in the build-up to the first presser lots of noise from Tyson Fury about what he was fighting, middleweight, buck tooth, ugly and all this sort of stuff, and diminishing him from top to bottom. What do we expect?
We saw him at the recent show together, didn't we, out in Saudi, and there was a lot of, jokes, and the friendship seemed to be good there, seemed to be real. What am I expecting from it? Pretty much the same from Tyson Fury. I just think that he now knows what he's going into.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
I
think we might have a different Tyson Fury.
Do you think you can walk in there and give it the same nonsense that you gave it last time?
I think it'll be different. I think at the end of the day, he believes he won the fight. I was sitting with him at Box Park a couple of weeks ago.
But he did.
Does he?
He didn't, did he?
Does he really believe that?
Does he really believe it? He says to everyone else he says that he won that fight. I mean, do we believe it? No. But if Tyson Fury deep down really thinks he lost that fight and he's got to go and try and exact revenge and back to the drawing board and all that, I think he might be very respectful at the press conference tomorrow.
You have to be respectful. I mean, because of...
He got beaten.
Listen, what they both put on there, and, whoever won or lost that fight, or whoever felt they won or lost that fight, it was a tough fight. So you have to... straight away, you get that respect. You gain that respect.
Both of them know it was a tough fight.
Yeah, of course
you gain that respect.
Yeah. Do you go with the... I mean, I remember Frank talking after the fight, or maybe a day after the fight, saying he went into the dressing room after the fight and saw Usyk, and Usyk looked like he'd had more taken out of him than Tyson Fury had. Do you subscribe to that view?
I will definitely say that Usyk would have had to work a lot harder than Tyson Fury because of the size disadvantages, the size advantage in Fury's favour. Without a doubt, like Usyk would have had to really dig deep. And when was it? The 6th round when he got caught with that uppercut?
The uppercut was... 4-7, Fury ruled, didn't he? And then Usyk had to go back to his corner and he had to have that second wind. And then when he came on strong, and we were sitting in here, we thought Usyk was a comfortable winner in the end. I think Usyk...
But it would have taken a lot out of him,
physically,
for sure.
it would have, but then he always keeps himself in shape.
You just nailed it. That's the point.
It's the conditioning of Usyk.
We're talking about a Tyson Fury, and everyone keeps saying the best version of Tyson Fury beats the best version of Alexander Usyk. Do we know if we're ever going to see that best version again? Because we haven't seen it for a couple of years. That's the point.
What, the Wilder trilogy, the Ngannou fight, etc., or is it Usyk's brilliance?
Well,
given the fact that Usyk has beaten them, all of them, Joshua, Dubois, the current IBF champion, and Tyson Fury, you have to give it to Usyk's brilliance, don't you?
He's the man.
The circus is rolling back into town, or the Carnival of Horrors. Do we expect to see...
Carnival of Horrors.
Well, we saw some of that, didn't we, with John Fury's behaviour in Saudi. I'm assuming that they're going to muzzle him or keep him on a leash and rein him in a little bit. And do you think that will extend... Or remind him...
They will
slim the team. It'll be different this time round?
I think they'll slim the team down for sure. What I'm saying is I don't think you'll have... as Simon puts it, the carnival surrounding Tyson Fury and what they go. We know what we're going into now. They know what they're going into.
Because the bubble's slightly been burst?
Yeah, absolutely.
The defeat?
No, I think that, you've got to show some form of respect.
Or they're telling him he pretty much won last time. He just had to go in there, use his size properly, take it for... Because the first round when he was messing around a little bit, Usyk got in control.
You look like a clown. That is the reality of it, because we all saw what happened there, and whether he thinks he won or he didn't win, Alexander Usyk won the fight in my eyes, and I think that most people felt that way. So just got to go in there, very respectful, knowing what you're going into. Now,
it's a real fight.
It's not about selling this fight, because everyone knows what
we didn't know. Beforehand, it could be the big guy beats the little guy, but absolutely, it didn't happen like that. It was a proper fight. Usyk, as you said, has beaten Joshua twice, Chisora, he's done everybody, and now he's done Fury. So this is a proper fight. It's a great rematch. It doesn't need the carnival.
Do you think that, because one of the things that was observed was there was a lot of voices in the corner for Tyson Fury. There was his father very dominant about what he needed to do. Sugar, who was in the corner, obviously saying his piece. What do you think that will be streamlined down a little bit, or one moment, one fight out of a body of work doesn't change the direction of travel? Because if they do change it, then they're acknowledging something was wrong. So they can't have it both ways. They can't convince Tyson Fury on the shtick that he won that fight and suddenly change things.
And Andy Lee are very, very experienced and knowledgeable boxing men. And if they really assess that fight and not listen to Tyson's, I won the fight, whatever, they'll go back and they'll calmly dissect it and they'll come up with the best game plan to execute and the best decisions to make in the corner. If they do their homework properly, you should just get one voice. And maybe that will be Sugar, maybe that will be just Andy occasionally. But I think that they will have learnt from that, because they are extremely intelligent, both of them. And I think that gives Tyson a real advantage, actually.
Sugar and Andy both work day to day with him, and very closely with him. Andy more so, even. You know, Sugar comes over for a certain amount of time, and I think that they will be the only two voices you hear in the corner. I think it will be slimmed down, and I think that's where you'll be at, because they will. Adam makes a great point. You know, they're both excellent coaches and students of the game.
I was there when Sugar Hill was with Emmanuel Stewart, and he learnt his trade. And Andy Lee went that way with Emmanuel Stewart as well, the Lennox Lewis days. They know boxing, the two of them. Andy Lee's a great pundit as well.
He is, I saw him.
They really know it. And I think that they will have gone back and they'll have assessed the situation and where Usyk had his moments and where Tyson should have established himself more. We saw rounds 4 to 7 where Tyson Fury can win the fight. But Usyk was just too good at the other rounds.
That's what he's great at doing, though. That's the problem.
And he hurt Fury, and that could also add to this fight.
So, all things being considered, irrespective of, we don't know whether we make the assertion. Are you in this camp, Adam, that Spencer and I have been in, which is the best version of Tyson Fury beats the best version of Alexander Usyk? Are you in that camp? You're not in that camp.
I'm not in that camp.
I'm
not in that camp because I think Alexander Usyk has proved himself the undisputed pound for pound king of the world. However, do I think Tyson Fury could beat Alexander Usyk? Yes, if he gets it right. There's not a lot between them, and the big guy does have that advantage with the reach. He's got natural skills. Have we seen the best of Tyson Fury? The trilogy with Yarde, that's a hard trilogy. The Ngannou fight, maybe we can discount a little bit. But he got hurt and almost stopped by Alexander Usyk in the first fight. So the pressure really for me is all on Fury. It's all on his feet. It's all whether he's still got those brilliant skills that took him to the top of the world and took him back again after all the problems. Or is Usyk just that enigma, that puzzle, that southpaw genius that they just can't get to? The amateur pedigree, the cruiserweight king, and now proving himself
So how do you expect
good
it to
enough
play out,
heavyweight.
with all that in mind? We would expect some improvements from Tyson Fury. We would expect some adjustments.
Definitely.
So, given all of that, and baking that into the thinking, given that you don't think the best version of Tyson Fury beats the best version of Alexander Usyk, how do you see this fight playing out?
I say the best version of Tyson Fury, in my eyes, Alexander Usyk has proved himself to beat Tyson Fury and Joshua a couple of times. So let's take the heavyweight side out a little bit. What's Fury got to do? Of course, any fighter at that elite level can get it right on the night. And Fury could just get that jab going beautifully. As Spencer mentioned, the uppercut. He's got fantastic reach advantage. He's still got... It's all about the legs. If he's still got the legs, he can win rounds here. But Usyk, and he is, because he's got that natural size advantage.
We're all talking about Tyson Fury and what he's got to do, obviously, to win this fight, and you know how he adapts and how he changes things up. But Alexander Usyk is the genius, as you just mentioned, at doing that himself. I mean, what do you think, Simon, on what Fury's got to do, he's got the capabilities to do it?
But my vantage point is, I often pick the wrong fight anyway, so what are you asking me for? I think that Tyson Fury will win this fight. I don't know why I think it. Maybe it's an innate belief that I've spent so long believing that Tyson Fury was everything he was cracked up to be.
Do you want him to win it?
On a boxing level, as a British man, supporting a British man, yeah, of course I do. On a personal level, do I like Tyson Fury's attitude over the last 18 months? Not very much. But if I can separate the two...
But you're talking about legacies and modern eras, though.
Well, I think...
Well, if he wins the fight and we get a third one and the story goes on...
Do we, though? Do you think we get the third?
Well, it depends on the Joshua situation and Dubois and Turkey and what he wants. But I think that Alexander Usyk found a way... when he fought Joshua the first time, to take away Joshua's jab, take centre ring.
Well, Joshua helped him with that.
A bit like Dubois did against Joshua, by the way. And then Usyk, in the first round, 2 rounds against Fury, he was cutting off the corners. He was brilliant. And Tony Bellew tells it better than anyone. Of
course he does.
The way he feints and the way he tires fighters out.
And how he exhausts you down.
Exactly.
I've got one for you.
But I'll tell you what, answer your question. There's a part of me that admires Alexander Usyk for the way he operates, for the way he conducts himself.
Outside
the interview that I saw him do with the Daily Mail was just pure class. The attribution...
He is class.
The attribution of the reasons why the heavyweight division has such cash power now is because of Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua gave him an opportunity which turned him into a potential superstar as a result of his performance. And I thought all of that is how I'd like to see a heavyweight champion of the world behave.
Simon, he behaves brilliantly. He is a maverick genius who is a wonderful, wonderful amateur. He's done everything as a professional, and he's fought for Ukraine. He's got a lovely family. Why wouldn't you absolutely love the man, the great Alexander Usyk? However, Tyson Fury, one of the greatest comeback stories of all time. From 25 stone in when we saw him in Monaco with Eddie Hearn, we didn't even think he'd get back in a ring. Look what he's done since. So both of them have got their places.
If Fury comes through this fight, by the way, if he does reverse it, like we hope that he does, if he does that, do we get the Anthony Joshua fight after that? Or would we get the Daniel Dubois fight for the Undisputed? Where do you see that going?
Don't know. The money in the room will be Anthony Joshua, won't it?
But
Joshua Fury is still the fight.
Still the fight. And it's the fight that the Saudis want, isn't it?
But do we not hunt the Undisputed again?
The legitimacy...
Joshua will want the Undisputed, but at the moment he's got Dubois. Does he go straight back in against Dubois? Really risky, that.
Yeah. I mean, the legitimacy of Joshua being in the ring with Fury...
Probably, because he wants to.
Well, the legitimacy and the fairness of Joshua being able to get a fight against Fury feels... That doesn't feel like it's appropriate, but the economics of boxing will dictate that it will be.
Sure.
Talking about getting back in the ring, we saw the re-emergence of Anthony Yarde in what I consider to be a slightly inauspicious performance.
Ralph Volkins.
Wasn't expected to make it as difficult.
He underperformed, but I understand that, if I'm totally honest, because he went in there against a guy that he was expected to beat, and sometimes you can only raise your game to the level of opponent. And I think Anthony Yarde was a victim of that. I think he went in there, he thought he had said he was going to take him out after a couple of rounds.
He dropped him in the first round, didn't he?
Volkins, he dropped him in the first round. But Volkins proved to be a very stubborn character, and he just kept coming back, and he made life hard for Yarde. But
I remember when Kieran Malloy did that on a GBM show. You drop someone early, you get that early success, and you think, oh, this is going to be easy. And actually, you slightly overlook, you slightly underperform, you slightly don't have that name. It can happen with fighters. And I think, would it have happened if Joshua Buatsi had been in the other side of the ring? Probably not. He would have performed his best.
But it was, Josh Buatsi was there.
Yeah.
Not wearing a thobe this time, no reason I suspect to.
He was commentating with us, by the way, for Talksport.
I saw, absolutely. And he was very critical of the performance, but it kind of reminded me to some extent of a couple of his performances prior to the recent win over Dan Aziz, where people were saying, Josh, you need to step it up a little bit. He even said it himself.
Again, he was guilty of that situation, I think, where he was just sort of boxing people that maybe he was expected to win. And when you get to this stage of your career, like them two have, and they're waiting for that big opportunity, it's difficult to raise your game for those sort of fights, and you do underperform. And I think that if we get Anthony Yarde versus Joshua Buatsi next, you'll see a different performance from both of them
Especially if
guys.
a fight that's been just put out there for year after year
that they both wanted
doesn't happen, and you think, and there's just the fights you don't really want in the middle. You want that big one for the money, for the pride, for everything, and you're geared up to it, and they keep talking about it, but it doesn't happen.
Where are you on Tundi, Anthony Yarde's trainer? Obviously, there's been a splitting of the ways with Queensbury. I think Queensberry have been quite harshly treated prima facie because they've got him 2 world title shots. He got one early against Kovalov and ultimately got the fight against Beterbiev.
He was good against Kovalov.
But Tunde's been a very dedicated trainer like over the years, and you look at the fighters like we saw Ahara Davies, who lost at the weekend, but he was up under the eye. Tunde, he learnt his trade there really. Adam Azim the same, Anthony Yarde, and you look at those guys and you go like, he puts in a lot of work and a lot of commitment.
Hasn't he? Since they're very young.
And people have criticised for many, many years about the style of training that he does with all the touching and whatnot. But it has been proved to be effective.
Do you think Yarde has developed, irrespective of what I said was an inauspicious performance on Saturday, do you think he's developed as a fighter over that period of time to show that there's a constant progression, which means you retain the same trainer? Because there is a point in life where you stop listening to people.
Yeah, I do. I think that relationship between him and Tunde is like a father-son relationship in many, many ways, but I think that you can see the development. Anthony Yarde had no amateur pedigree. He had 8 fights as an amateur, turned pro, learnt his job as a professional, and Tunde's done a great job with him. I think that relationship has been spot on.
I think it's a very good question to ask because it's a difficult one. Tunde has done a fantastic job with Anthony Yarde up to a point. Now he doesn't perform under the lights with Sky, with Buatsi sitting there. It's hard, right? Father, son. I know with Johnny Nelson, my great friend in boxing, he stayed loyal to Brendan the entire time, his whole career, because he started with him. He wasn't any good, and he got the best out of him, and then he went on to do really well. So yes, that is that very, very strong relationship. But you mentioned Campbell Hatton earlier. He's left his uncle to go to Ben Davison because he realised he needs a fresh start. So it's a tough call, and that's only one the two of them know. Really, I know it's a very close bond, and I don't expect it to be broken.
I've seen them working in the gym together, and I think that
it's pretty impressive.
It's a relationship that you go, they see.
But has he improved? Do you think Anthony's really improved?
I do, yeah, absolutely. I think he's improved. I mean, you go look at the performance against Beterbiev, and you see, what he's gone on to do and what he's gone to achieve. Beterbiev got asked questions in that fight. However it went, there were times when Yarde was having great moments. So you go, that was not so long ago. I think that the improvements are still very much there.
Probably the question that Simon asked, if Yarde had knocked the guy out in 2 rounds on Saturday night, we wouldn't be having this debate, right? So I guess you stick with Tunde because that's what you know and that's what you feel comfortable with.
Listen, you're only as good as your last fight.
It's a hard decision for a fighter.
Absolutely. But Tunde is his guy, I think.
Where are you on the fight? I mean, ultimately, it's a fight that I know that they want to make. Maybe Queensberry might not want to make it right now because of their relationship with Anthony Yarde, but certainly Ben Shalom wants to make it. Buatsi wants to take it. When you look at this fight,
isn't it matchroom against boxer now? That's what Ben keeps saying, isn't it?
Probably. When you look at this fight, who do you naturally lean towards?
Do you know what? It's one.
Yeah, me too.
What did you say?
Buatsi,
yeah. It's one of those fights where you look at it and you go, both guys raise their game when they're in with a better opponent. That is for sure. But the pedigree is with Buatsi.
He's been a slow burner, Spencer.
But he finds a way to win as well.
He found a way to get bronze in Rio. When he came to us and he turned professional, we thought he was going to be an absolute star. And it didn't quite work. It's been a long road with Joshua, but I thought he was really good against Willie Hutchinson at Wembley when he needed to be on the big stage. And I like Yarde. I think Anthony's a great guy and a great fighter. I just fancy Buatsi timing-wise.
It's one of those fights that whoever turns up on the night with those two, it is that tough to call.
It'll be a good fight.
It'll be a great fight.
Of course, it'll be a good fight. It'll be in the sort of category of the fight that Josh had with Dan Aziz in terms of the meaning to both fighters and the intensity of the fight.
Probably even bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely, it is bigger than that. But what I'm saying is that the fight that we got from Aziz and Buatsi was.
This is a tougher one to call than that one, I think.
Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
It is, but I fancy Buatsi. Just a little bit classier.
Also on Saturday, we saw Adam Azim against Ahara Davies. A very impressive performance. What did you guys?
Performance. I was so impressed. He showed a lot of maturity for a kid who's only had 11 fights. I think that you see the progression of him and how he's improved. Yes, he's always been a little star anyway, but you see him going through the ranks now, and they're developing him very well. The apprenticeship has been great, and I think Ahara Davies, yes, his best days were behind him, but he's still very heavy-handed and very dangerous. I think the timing, how he controlled the space, the finish with that left hook was very, very calculated. I thought that was a top-class performance from Adam Azim. Showed that he can step up that level again.
And fight in front of the cameras, yeah.
Excellent performance from Adam Azim. I'm very hot on Adam. He had a couple of under-par displays at times, and I think maybe moved a little bit quickly. But
that's been good for him, though.
There's so many good fights out there for him. Obviously, the Dalton Smith's a big domestic one, but I think he's going to become a world champion on this sort of form. What's he had? 12 now. He's absolutely flying. He's only 22. I did think it was a fight he was going to win before the first bell.
Absolutely.
And O'Hara Davies sort of announced.
But it was the manner in which he won it.
Yeah, of course, it's the manner.
And he fought slightly differently as well, didn't he?
Jab was excellent. Listen to
he
Shane in the
showed good
corner.
maturity.
Real maturity. Picked his shots well. That body work was fantastic, and his speed is electric.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Dalton, and so did Adam Azim, saying he'll fight him next. Dalton's down the line. Dalton, what did you make? Hi, mate. You all right?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good.
What did you make of Adam Azim's performance on Saturday night?
Yeah, I thought it was a good performance from him. It's kind of what I expected with the fight. You know, obviously O'Hara is not quite the fighter he was, and I think we've seen that on the night. But you can't take nothing away from him. It was a great display, and Adam did what he had to do.
Dalton, there's been a lot of talk about you and Adam Azim. It's a fight that's been building for some time now. You've had 16 fights. He's now had 12 fights. Where are you with this at the moment? He's saying he thinks 2025 could be the year that you both fight. I mean, is it a fight that you want next, or do you feel that there should be, more honours on the line for this one? Wait until one of you wins a world title, because you feel that at the moment, this is just capturing the imagination of the public, and you go, if you leave this brewing for another 12 months or so, it could be a much bigger fight. I mean, where are you at with it?
Look, I said from the start, whenever the fight wants to be made or can be made, I'm happy to take it whenever. But the fight will happen when it happens. It takes two to make a fight. But look, when the fight happens, it happens. I've got my own journey, my own path I want to go down. I ain't got to rely on Adam Azim. But while the fight's in high demand, those are the fights I'm going to take. I don't need Adam. I'm in a great position in my career now, and if the fight makes sense, it makes sense. Obviously, we thought we might have got it this year for the purse bids. Obviously, they pulled out at the last minute. So, if the fight happened then, I'd have happily taken it then, or if it happens next year, whenever.
Dalton, hi. I said I'm hot on Adam Azim and have been from the beginning. You know how highly I respect you and what you've done and the progression that you've made. But and I know you've got your own path. But let's be honest, the British public want to see this fight. You and Adam Azim, it's a fantastic battle, different styles. Both of you, emerging towards your peak. And I think Spencer got it right there. Are you waiting for it to have a world title, it to be a bigger money fight? Or is it something that we could have, 2-3 fights and you could make each other with a rivalry?
Exactly like you said there, it could be more than one fight. Like I said before, I'll have the fight whenever it's ready. I thought it was going to happen this year because obviously they pulled out with the purse bids the last minute when the Harlem Eubank fight, the face-off got made. So obviously, if the fight happened this year, I'd have had it then. If it happens next year, whenever. But of course, I don't need Adam Azim. That's not the only fight I need. I'm in a great position. So, whatever the fight's in high demand and it's getting talked about, it's getting bigger and bigger.
I mean, you had a great win last time out against Jose Cepeda, taking him out in 5 rounds, done a better job than Ramirez and the other guys that are boxing. Very, very tough guy. You proved there that you're on world level. I think with Adam Azim, he's sort of chasing you, if you like. And I heard Barry McGuigan saying yesterday that they're going to do it on their terms and their time, etc., and that you're trying to force maybe the fight now because the timing is better for you as opposed to for him.
Yeah, of course they're going to say that, obviously with the progression and stuff. But I know the people who I was fighting when I was 18. Obviously, every career, boxers have the careers because they've got to progress to become that, become to the level they want to be at. So, of course, each fighter's got to progress, but, it's not all going to be on their terms. Hence why, I'm not the B-side. I'm not chasing Adam Azim. He's not the top dog, so, everything won't be on their terms. It'll be a 50-50 because of the position we're in. He's not in a higher position than I am. If the fight gets made, it's if it makes sense for us both.
Dalton, thanks for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you next year in some big fights, mate.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Well done, mate.
Cheers, Dalton.
When you look at that fight, I personally think it was right for Adam Azim not to take that fight this year.
Totally agree.
I think he should take it when he's ready to take it, not on the terms of other people. Dalton Smith is a maturer, a more experienced fighter than Adam Azim. But when you see, I mean, inevitably it's going to get made.
Listen, I think people are talking about that and they're saying, Dalton Smith, he's still improving massively as well. He's only had 16 fights himself. And you look at it and you look at the talent of these two, and that could be the biggest fight in British boxing, without a doubt. If you give that 12 months, 18 months, even 2 years, and they both go on, because I think they both have the ability to win world titles, and it could be much more on the line than if they take it now because they feel one guy's maybe slightly ahead of the other guy. And you go, you could just be ruining an unbelievable fight that could turn into a trilogy or whatever, because you look at two talents here, Adam, and we've seen them over the years, and you look at them and you go, not yet, it's too soon. Like, let everyone know who these two guys.
Let it stew a little longer.
Let it boil just a little longer.
I totally agree with you. Adam was right not to take it at this moment. He's gone and beaten O'Hara Davies now, and 2025 awaits for him, and it's going to be a very, very exciting year for Adam Azim. But Dalton is on his own path. I think Dalton will get to become a world champion first. But I think the fight is not too far away. I'm talking 4 or 5 more fights, maybe, the pair of them. 2026, maybe we could have a couple of Dalton Smith, Adam Azim fights. I would absolutely love that. But yeah, let's build them a little bit more. As much as we want to see it right now, I think it's right just to brew.
But they are ruminating and speculating that it's going to happen next year. And if it were to happen...
Well, we've got the Saudis, haven't we?
Sure.
We've got Turkey.
But if it were to happen... Let's take ourselves into hypothetical land for the purpose of this conversation. If it were to happen, how would you see that fight playing out? You've seen the performance, because we were talking about it last week, and then we said, let's see how Adam goes against O'Hara Davies. Right, we're now seeing a fighter getting better, progressing, being able to fight in different ways. We can now picture what it might look like.
It's a really hard fight to call.
Do you know why it's a hard fight to call? Because what I took from the Adam Azim fight last time out was the maturity that he showed, the patience, where he was there and he recognised he was in with a dangerous guy. Maybe he passed his best, but he's still very, very dangerous. And he slowed himself down. His timing was impeccable, controlled the space. So he's still improving he's improving a lot. Dalton Smith is probably...
I think he's improving too.
Absolutely, massively. With the Sapeda fight last time out, you look at that and you go...
Grant Stable's absolutely flying, isn't it?
He showed him...
Cameron, you've got Chantel Cameron there. It's
a difficult fight.
I don't want them to fight. I want them to plough their own troughs.
Yeah.
What's Dalton, number 3 in the world now?
Yeah.
He's there. He's nearly there.
So he's there. And I would prefer them to fight further down the line when there's a strap on the line, like a world title.
And the thing is, Adam got to the European title. It was all quick,
and there'll be two different fighters then as well. There'll be,
So who do you match Adam with over the next 2 or 3 fights? That's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard, because I think with Adam, you've got to get him some international experience. I think that, I think it was a great move getting him some South Americans, some tough guys that are going to ask him questions, take the speed, take the power, and come back at him and drag him into that dogfight, because that's where Adam needs to be. He needs to be put in there, in that dogfight, to sort of weather those storms, come through them situations.
But he'll want a world title shot next year.
Yeah.
Adam Azim.
Either which way, what he wants and what he might get might be 2 different things, right? But either which way, we can celebrate. We've got 2 very significant fighters in this weight class.
Yeah.
Talking about another fighter in this weight class that's significant and doesn't perhaps get the attention that he should get, which is Jack Catterall, who's out on Saturday against Regis Prograis. We know Regis from the past, from the fact that he was going to turn up and deal with Josh Taylor.
Yeah.
Lost that fight.
Very good fight.
Very good fight. And it was a wafer-thin result, wasn't it?
And listen, it could have gone either way, that one. That was a very tight fight to call. I think that what we found out with Regis Prograis, though, although he is a good southpaw and very heavy-handed, is that he's got slow feet. And for someone like Jack Catterall, who's got good feet and he'll work and he's in and out all the time and peppers away, I just think that right now, Jack Catterall wins that fight.
It's a lovely clash of styles.
It is, but Prograis, what we found out against Haney is struggles with guys that have got quick feet and quick hands.
It was a great finish, wasn't it, when he fought Josh Taylor at the O2, and now you've got the big new Manchester Arena. It's a great fight. Regis Prograis is a serious quality operator.
Great
really
fighter.
Good. And Jack Catterall on a roll now, needs to keep busy, and I think it's a great fight. I'm looking forward to being there.
I think in Jack's mind, this is an eliminator for a world title shot against someone like Liam Farrow, right?
Yeah. Well, he's got to get that world title shot after that.
I mean, in all sense of purposes, he could be a 4 belt holder now.
He's
Jack Catterall.
he's ticking over, waiting for that opportunity. But that opportunity, I mean, you go back to, when was that, 2022? When
Just hope he doesn't take too long getting
He needs
there.
it now. Needs it right
Needs
now.
a good win over Prograis, and then
Has he got him at the right time? I mean, Prograis just come off a pretty compelling defeat to Devon Haney.
That's what I'm saying.
Haney boxed well that night.
Haney boxed brilliantly that night, but Haney's got those sort of attributes that Catterall had with, like, Catterall's very annoying. He's in and out all the time. He doesn't hold his feet. He moves away. And Haney likes someone to sit there with him. If someone sits in the pocket of with Prograis. If someone sits in the pocket of Prograis lets his hands go. He's very heavy-handed, dangerous, explosive, great shot selection. That movement wins Catterall the fight, I think.
Yeah, and I think...
And he's tough as well.
Yeah, the corner, Jamie and the guys, they'll be working it out. They'll have done their homework and they'll execute a plan. I think Jack will win on points on Saturday night.
I think Jack will win. However the outcome that comes up. I mean, Jack thinks he can stop him. He would do, wouldn't he?
Maybe late.
But notwithstanding, I think Jack Catterall deserves a bit more attention and a bit more opportunity.
But it's a hard fight.
It's a hard fight, yeah. But it'll be a good profile builder as well, won't it?
It's a 12-rounder for sure. I don't think Jack stops him. I don't think we've ever seen that from Prograis.
You mentioned earlier on, Adam, about a potential boxer 5v5 against Matchroom. And I think Ben was talking to, who's this motley crew, IFL? You ever heard of them? IFL, our mate Coogan. And he put forward the following. Eubank versus Ben. Azim versus Smith. Fisher versus Frazer Clarke. Opataya versus CBS. And Caroline Dubois versus Terry Harper. When you look at that list, besides my remonstration, who comes out on top in that?
I like the Frazer Clarke versus Johnny Fisher fight. I like
who comes
that
out
a
on
lot,
top
actually.
between Matchroom and Boxer?
Interesting. Sorry, I thought
It's
you
not the
said-
individual fights.
Well, you want to go through them? OK.
Yeah, can you go through that again?
Right, Eubank Ben.
Eubank
Quick
Ben.
start for 10.
Yeah.
Eubank Ben.
What, you want a prediction?
Yes.
Eubank.
Eubank.
I'll go Ben.
All right. Azim versus Smith.
That's a tough one to call, that. Go on, move on.
How are we going to get to an outcome?
I'm going to just go against him. See how
Fisher
we go.
versus Frazer Clarke.
I think Fisher.
Opataya versus CBS.
Opataya.
Opataya.
Where were you going with Fisher versus Frazer Clarke?
Well, Frazer's got... I think Fisher, you've got to go at the moment.
You just said you were going to go against me.
Well, I want to go against
But
you.
you
I'm trying my
you
best.
didn't.
I'm trying my best. What do you want me to go against you? I'll go with Big Frazer if you want. OK, I'm going Opataya. You're going CBS?
No, I'm not.
I'm going Opataya.
I didn't say I was going against you.
And I'll go
mate.
as much as I
Opataya.
love Terry Harper,
Yeah.
and she's been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful fighter for so many years. 308 world champion. You have to go with Caroline Dubois, superstar in the
Yeah,
making.
I agree with that.
So where's the Adam Azim Dalton Smith fight?
That's the 50-50.
That's the one.
That's the tough one.
We're going to be debating for a long time after this show.
Can we leave that?
Well, it doesn't help me in my outcome that I wanted as to who come out.
Well, who do you think?
So, that's a great,
Here we go. Here we go. See?
I think Adam Azim.
Okay. Now?
No. One more fight in between now and then.
Okay. So let's see. Let's see when it's made.
So what are you going to say?
Which gives me Matchroom, which makes me feel ill. Eddie, my friend, I've gone with you.
Yes,
it's not true. I don't think you're a
He's
tit.
healing the relationship. Thank you.
Derek Chisora, Baby Miller.
Yeah.
Oh, it had to happen. Or it has
It's a
to
great
happen,
fight,
doesn't
to
it?
be
It's a
fair.
great
It's a great fight.
I mean,
It is a great fight. I mean,
Fight number 49.
when you talked about Derek Chisora, what's he got, 2 more left now? I wanted an easy route out, and he just seems to not be wanting to choose them ones because
he loved fighting Joe Joyce, didn't he? He wants a hard fight. Baby Miller was hovering around AJ Dubois. We saw him at the weigh-in, and he just...
Baby Miller's heavy-handed, man.
He looked good against Andy Ruiz, I thought. I think
He did.
that's an interesting fight, him and Derek.
Fight number 49. One more to go.
I wish he would have picked an easier 49, if I'm honest.
You mentioned Joe Joyce, Adam.
Yes.
There's some reports that he's fighting next month.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Joe Joyce versus Tony Oka. Repeat of the Rio Olympics 2016. Controversial outcome. Many people felt that Joe Joyce should have got the gold, ended up with a silver. It's the fight to make, man. Tony Oka now. Tony Oka under the watchful eye of Don Charles. Yeah. Don Charles has been rebuilding his confidence psychologically. He's working on stuff with him. I've been up with Tony quite a bit. He's improving as a fighter mentally, not just physically. With Don Charles, with Daniel Dubois. Wow, the spars they have.
Yes.
By the way, insane. with Tony Yoka and Daniel Dubois.
Don Charles is the man of the moment, and Tony
Yeah.
seems really comfortable under him.
It's a great fight.
He's got away from France, and he was the superstar there, and obviously he had those defeats, and he's rebuilt. And I like the fact he's come away from his home, and he's based himself in Finchley under Don. And yeah, it's a really interesting fight.
And you talk about that rebuild, and when you're talking about coming away from the lights and everything else, he's done exactly that. I mean, where was he boxing at, like Basildon Leisure Centre and stuff? He took himself away and has properly rebuilt himself under the radar where no one's really seen what's going on. Like, you look at these, like, what they call small hall shows, and you go, like, Tony Yoka, Olympic gold medal.
It's a rebuild for Joe Joyce, though. I mean, this is isn't it?
Both of them.
It's a 50-50 fight.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. They're both at that stage of their career, but what a fantastic fight to, you know,
It's really
repeat that.
interesting, isn't
It's
it?
a great fight.
Yeah.
It's a great fight.
Obviously, and rightly so, huge amount of credit and acclaim given to Fabio Wardley. Now we're getting a litany of names being linked to him. Where do you think, I mean, you were taking him from Frazer Clarke to Joe Parker last week.
Really?
Hold on.
You were.
Hold on. I said
you were.
He's a Ring Magazine top 10.
I said Joe Anderson. You said.
Yeah, Anderson, Joyce, Yoka, those sort of fighters.
Yeah,
No,
or
it's
even
too soon for Parker.
Hergovich. Yeah, it is too soon. What I'm saying is,
Where do you think he should be, Adam?
I think Fabio.
We're talking about, he's in the top 10 in the world now.
Yes, but you've got to get it right.
Absolutely, but you go...
Spence.
Frank is a Brit.
Spence,
Frank.
I heard your drivel last week. I'm asking Adam.
Simon,
His opinion.
what Frank's done, he's pulled off a masterstroke again, getting Fabio Wardley in.
Has, yeah.
Now he's got to match him right to the very top, because what they've got still is a guy that's done so well, who had just a handful of white-collar fights, no amateur experience, and look at where he stands. Don't jump too soon.
I mean, Spencer's talking nonsense about putting him in with Joe Parker, isn't he?
No, I think that's wrong. I think I would look at the likes of your Joe Joyces, your Tony Yokas, your Derek Chisoras, that sort of... The Derek Chisora's a good fight.
But aren't they all behind him, though?
Doesn't matter.
What are you going on about then? Like, what I'm saying is, you're talking about development and pushing him on.
He had under one round with... Hang on a minute. He had under one round with Frazer Clarke this time.
Yeah, because he demolished him.
I think he needs a tough, hard test before he gets to that elite level.
I think he thinks the same himself, Fabio. Because when I spoke to him the other day and we were talking about what... Because he thinks he's ready to go with anyone, because obviously he's buoyed by his performances, and so he should be. But I also think he's a very sensible lad.
Yeah,
he's a very bright lad. You know, he speaks brilliantly, and he knows there's opportunities awaiting for him.
Yes.
And he also knows that he needs to learn certain aspects of his craft and trade that he's yet to experience.
I mean, there's one big heavyweight that still no one really wants to talk about, and that's Martin Bakole.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't put him in with Martin Bakole.
No.
And you wouldn't put him in with Zhilei Zhang, either.
Zhilei Zhang fights Caballel. I mean, these are tough, hard fights, and Fabio doesn't have the experience, the pedigree. He's still a work in progress for me, and I wouldn't rush him.
No, I agree. Right, fellas, that's it for episode 92. Myself and Spencer will see you next week. And Adam, thanks very much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Nice being here.